Welcome back to the show. We're about to learn the secret sauce. Thank you so much for making the ride. Did you ride your bike down?
I did ride my bike down.
Are you carless in the East Bay?
No, I have a car. I like road trips a lot, so keep a car around. But if I'm just going in between Berkeley and Oakland, I'll bike.
It's a great ride.
Yeah.
I used to live off of 59th and Telegraph.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like right between three BART stations. Mm-hmm. So you've got like Ashby, MacArthur, and Rockridge. Mm-hmm. And depending on the weather and how I felt, I'd either ride the bike down to MacArthur, ride the bike in the city to get to work, to get to GitHub, really. Mm-hmm. And I missed that. I live in East Oakland now. But we're not here to talk about Oakland and Berkeley. Talking about, because you're one of the maintainers for the CLI. Mm-hmm. And do you guys just call it the CLI?
I call it GH.
GH?
So that's the command's name, but our official name is the GitHub CLI.
The GitHub CLI, which is open sourced. Mm-hmm. It launched 2021?
Yeah, around 2021, yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about that and how to do open source at a company, which is, it's very unique at GitHub, as you will share your experience working as an outside contributor or collaborator. But I wanted to talk about your background first. So we briefly found that you went to school in Indiana.
Yeah.
What school?
Just a little Quaker college called Earlham.
Okay.
Earlham College.
I'm going to pull my naive card. And what's a Quaker college?
So a Quaker college is a college that's run by Quakers. And Quakers are a religious organization. I don't know how to describe them. They like peace and consensus and equity, social justice. That's kind of their whole thing. So I went not as a practicing Quaker, but I really liked their code of ethics. I liked their kind of approach to politics and stuff. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. I've got a lot of Wikipedia to look into because
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. They were chased out of the colonies in early America. They were hated by the other Puritans, excommunicated and all that. Yeah. They were too chill. You couldn't be chill in the 1600s. Like, you had to be a jerk, to get by in Puritan society.
Cutthroat.
Yeah.
I mean, literally cutthroat, because literally that's what the
the
folks came through and did.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't need to do all that history lesson. But yeah, so you got a CS degree. Did you study CS?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I didn't go with that intention. I wanted to be a writer. And I got to college and I said, money's going to run out. I don't feel like having a huge pile of loans. I should probably get a job, and I like computers, so I chose CS. So
excellent. And I already, before we started talking, talk about all the places you've lived, but actually I want to talk about where you worked. So after college, I know you eventually got to Venmo, but how did you get to Venmo?
So it's a long, winding road. First, I actually worked for my college. So that was one of the reasons I went there, was because I was going to major not in CS, but they had this really cool thing called Applied Groups, where it was like an apprenticeship program. So from my first year, I was apprenticing under a web developer who was employed by the school. And it was huge. Like, I got to learn all these skills and get paid. It was like my work study thing. So it was amazing. I really, really valued it. And so I worked on my college's course registration system, and I developed a couple new features for that. I did support for it. It was a huge, big responsibility and a huge learning opportunity. It was awesome.
So why'd you leave that then?
Because they... Okay, I was going to swear. They canceled it. They got rid of it. They bought an Oracle product for tens of thousands of dollars, and it was awful. And I was really mad, and I quit.
Got it.
I went to work for the radio station instead.
Okay, we can't skip by that. So did you do code at the radio station?
Yeah, I did. I was a computer person, so IT, web development. I managed we had really crude internet streaming. This is 2008 or so.
2008, so that would have been, what's the FM thing? I remember back in the day, all the radio stations were going, the clear channel stations were going, and you could stream radio on the internet, which is the Silicon Valley thing.
We had this ancient desktop computer under a desk in the booth, and it had some wires running from the studio, and it was running Icecast, the open source streamer. And on our website, I wrote up instructions on like how to open it in VLC and like listen to it, just the raw network stream. So we didn't have a fancy website. This is before HTML5. You know, we didn't have an audio element and all that stuff. So, but people used it. Yeah, people followed my instructions. They all installed VLC, opened the network stream. Yeah, it worked pretty well.
What type of radio station was it that people would go through the jumping through hoops?
It was just the college radio station.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I had a noise show called Dead Air that I had a lot of fun doing. I would get these like confused calls from really old people in Indiana who were listening. Like,
wait, could you explain noise shows?
So noise music is just like it's music that's not focused on rhythm or tonality. It's just like big walls of sound and weird experimental stuff. So I introduced rural Indiana to that through college radio. Our most popular show was like a local person came in, did like an old timey country show. People loved that. So it was like every genre, ineptly run, terrible automation. Yeah, classic college radio story.
That's amazing. Yeah, so you cut your teeth there after you ran from the Oracle project. So then what was next?
So after that, I got a job in town where my college was doing web development. I wrote Perl.
Okay, I remember Perl.
First job out of college, yeah. And we worked on adoptapet.com. It's like a cool nonprofit for finding shelter pets. So,
and that was local to Indiana?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
It's a little, 7-8 person company. Yeah. It was founded by graduates from my college who just stuck around. And
yeah. Is that still around?
No. Long gone.
Long gone, yeah.
Adopt-A-Pet is still around, and I still highly recommend using it. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. We're in the market for a dog.
So, yeah, it's perfect. You can search for shelter pets. I worked a lot on the search engine. I think a bunch of my code is still in there. You can save searches as RSS feeds. That was like my huge feature that I'm super proud of. Not that anybody uses RSS anymore, but
no, I honestly I was thinking about it yesterday because we have a newsletter and we have a blog for open source. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I don't know if we even set up RSS, and no one's complained. So I guess we'll just continue to move on. Because last time I set up a blog, there was RSS, long time ago.
I love RSS. I'm waiting for it to come back. I think it's great.
Well, Google Reader, rest in peace.
I know.
I think there's been quite a few new there's no replacement because it's dead. But I think Feedly was the thing I used for a while, and then Pocket was another one that I used. But yeah, I don't think there's ever been a replacement. But I think the way startups go is if you just redo the thing that happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Just do it faster in AWS.
Put a fresh tone of paint on it. Yeah. Figure out how to spin it differently to a VC.
Web3.
Yeah. Just say that, and then people just hand you money.
Yeah. Actually, AI is the new.
Excuse me. It's AI now.
RSS on AI. I don't know how that would work, but I'm sure if you got RSS.ai, it would work.
I'll go to my marketing material and I'll just string replace Web3 for AI, and the funding is just going to roll in. It's going to be that simple.
Yeah. So how long did you spend your time at Adopt-A-Pet?
I was a backend engineer, so just figuring out. We were working with CGI application. It's a web framework built on the CGI.pm library. So a lot of just figuring out how that works. And we had a lot of weird idiosyncratic things. We shared a testing database. So we couldn't all run the test suite at the same time. Figuring out that kind of stuff. I did a bunch of improvements around that, and work closely with the designer on implementing new features and stuff like that.
It's amazing. I started coding. Well, I started professionally coding with Git. So everything else was copy and paste, put scripts, a bunch of places. Never had to do with a team. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing when you hear stuff could not run the test. You had to pass it around. That's was it not Git based then back then?
No. It was,
I guess Perl. Then was it wasn't SVN?
I think you might never guess. It was Darks.
Darks.
We used Darks.
No, I've heard of Darks. Yeah.
Yeah, we used Darks. It was really cool, but there weren't branches. It turns out branches are really nice. So yeah, when I found GitHub and I found Git, and I was really happy with it. Yeah. That didn't really look back after that.
Was that 2008, 2009?
Around there, yeah.
Yeah. What's the story behind your GitHub handle?
It is stolen from somebody else's cool art project. They took a bunch of Shakespeare and they scanned it into JPEGs and allowed the compression to kind of distort it. and then they OCR'd it, printed out what the OCR came up with, scanned it again, let it compress. And so you could watch all this text just degrade, over time. And I thought that was really funny. And the name William Shakespeare got mangled into Vilmibim Shacks for Peas. And I just thought that was really funny. So I was on the market for a new handle, and I had just seen that art project, and I was like, I'll be Vilmibim. So yeah, that's me.
That's amazing. Because I remember I think when we had chatted when I worked at GitHub, I think I called you Tim once because your handle it looked like Tim to me. And I was like, oh, I just completely butchered his name. I don't know if you didn't pick up on it, but
there's no official pronunciation of my handle for sure. I mean, I say Vilmibim, but it's, whatever it could be Tim. Make it up. I don't care.
I love how Quaker you are about this.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if I just verbed that, but we'll make it a thing.
That's fine.
So congratulations for graduating out of Darks. So how many jobs did you have between GitHub and
let's see. So after Adaptopet, I went to this company called Cox Media Group Digital and Strategy. The name kept getting longer. But we were so I moved to Atlanta for that job. And we were tasked with creating a new CMS with Django for a whole bunch of newspapers and radio stations and TV stations to use. So all these local markets throughout the country, we're going to use our CMS to just publish their news. It was interesting. I did a lot of JavaScript engineering. I ended up leading JavaScript development there, doing training, best practices, introducing testing, a lot of ads optimization. I was kind of soul training, but made some great friendships. Had a pretty good time there. And then after that was Puppet Labs.
Okay, I do know that company. I know Cox, but also I know Puppet as well.
Yeah, I did Puppet. I did that remotely for a while. Then I did move to Portland to work there for a bit. And the product that I was hired to work on got canceled in 30 days of my starting. So it was a weird time. I just kind of bounced around stuff and then worked on enterprise for a while. Then I went to Venmo because I Googled, find me a remote job that'll send me to New York for free. And Venmo came up. So I picked it. That was a real weird experience working at Venmo. And then
was this pre PayPal?
No, it was post PayPal.
Post PayPal. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you got to GitHub and worked on the GitCoin team.
Yes. Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't know. GitCoin is the billing team.
Yes, not a cryptocurrency. I cringe when I say my former team name. Not because I want to speak poorly of them, but just because everyone thought we were doing a cryptocurrency.
Yes, no. I thought that when I got there, and then the GitCoin project happened a little bit later after that.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, that didn't help anything. So I think that team is just called billing now, or billings and payments or something. So yeah.
Yeah, they deleted all the Soda Panda Rockets and the Pizza Penguins.
Yeah. Yep. Things are very clear and clearly named now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't realize you had such a tour through the internet, but also to the U.S. But you got to FinTech from Venmo to GitHub. And then what was your experience? When did you join? You joined GitHub 2018?
2018, yeah.
Yeah, that's right, because we're within a couple weeks of each other joining. And so how was that experience?
It was positive. I really liked GitHub at the time. Yeah. It was such a formative tool for me. The age that I was, in college, I learned CVS and SVN and then, Darks. And I was trying to work with Google Code at the time, and GitHub just felt awesome. It was fun to use. It was straightforward. And I felt like I was just really proud of being able to fill up my list of repositories, and kind of look at this weird garden that I was tending of all these side projects and weird ideas. And it just felt nice having them in one place. And it was, finding, I made friendships over GitHub. People would find my weird projects and submit a patch. I had a friend come to my wedding that I met because he submitted a PR to one of my repos.
What project was that?
It was this weird art project called MooRepl. It's a multiplayer closure REPL. So it's like a remote code execution turned into a game. A bunch of people can just shell into the same closure REPL and then share a namespace. So define variables and stuff. And I added a thin little layer for making a game in it. So making rooms and in picking up items and stuff like that. So people, come in, write a bunch of closure, build out this little text-based virtual world. Just this person happened to live in the same city as me and came across it, submitted a patch, and been friends ever since. So I just getting to actually work at GitHub was a pretty big deal. Yeah, it felt good.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a great story too as well. And it's everyone has a story like that where I was not on GitHub, but I was on Reddit, on the React Reddit. And one of the moderators I would interact with and like answer questions. Well, he wasn't a moderator. I was actually answering questions. They were just a new React user, and they had like saw my answer and like was unblocked, and then he eventually became a moderator, and then eventually started working in my last job before GitHub at Netlify. And he mentioned that to me in passing. I was like, oh, I didn't know we crossed paths, but yeah, your handle looks familiar. And anyway. That person was Swix. I don't know if I probably should have said Swix, but Swix for folks in the React world know who Swix is. But what I'm getting at is, okay, so you're at GitHub, but you're working on the GitHub GH CLI or GH whatever. I always called it CLI because at GitHub it's easier. Yeah. Because the way the full name is, it's CLI/CLI.
Yeah. Right.
Which it's memorable. But what's the story behind the CLI?
So it started with actually with a defunct project.
Hub.
So he made Hub, and so Hub it was really neat. It was a wrapper around Git, and the idea was you replaced Git with Hub, and you could use these additional features that would just kind of appear to interact with GitHub. And so it kind of blurred the line between Git and GitHub a lot more. And the person who ended up maintaining that was Mislav, who I work with now. And so, someone floated this idea of like, why not we, people seem to like this Hub project. What would it look like if we actually staffed a team around it? Because Mislav was actually doing it in his spare time. Yeah. It was not his day job. So the team, the idea got pitched, and someone, my boss, Neha, was looking for recruits. And I mean, I love the command line. I love text. I love open source. So it was like, is this real? I was really excited to get involved. So, we all sat down in a room and just said, well, like, we have staff, we have funding. What are we going to do? And we had to make the call of, are we going to just maintain Hub and build new features there, or are we going to do something brand new? And that was actually a really tough decision. We spent like a couple weeks just going back and forth and thinking about that. We made the call to do something new, and in retrospect, I feel it was the right decision.
What was Hub written in?
It's a weird story. Hub was written in Ruby.
Okay.
But it was starting to have some really serious performance issues, and people were unhappy trying to use it as this like daily tool in their workflow. And so, and at this point, Mislav was the maintainer, and someone just showed up with a pull request to just rewrite the entire thing in Go. Like, hey, I did this, and do you want it? So Mislav, I don't want to get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure he had never written Go, never read Go, but he looked at the benchmarks and he was like, oh, that's fast. And so sure, he took it. So it was written in Go, but it was like this, like full formed out of somebody's head, just showed up in a PR. And it was getting kind of hard to maintain for that reason. Because the people maintaining it, they weren't super familiar with this new version. So we took a lot of the lessons from that and some of the code from that and put it into this new thing, which is also Go.
Yeah, that makes sense to sort of start fresh instead of like trying to figure out this tech debt, and then folks who maybe missed that PR and come back and like, hey, who moved my cheese? I actually did a contribution to the CLI. A couple maybe 6 months after it was launched. Okay. And I had actually done Go at my previous employer, but I got sort of pigeonholed into only doing JavaScript and React stuff. And I was like, oh, I want to do Go. So like I ended up just sort of looking for I was using the CLI because as the developer advocate at GitHub, it's like, hey, we had to talk about stuff and interject it in storytelling. So I was like, oh, let me just get comfortable with the CLI. And I use Hub quite a few jobs ago. It was like someone had recommended us use Hub commands, and it was like, oh, this is cool, but like forgot about it. So I don't remember what my contribution was, to be quite honest.
I'm sorry that I don't either.
Yeah, I think Mislav was the one who merged it.
Yeah, he probably did. Yeah, he's a lot more, I think, the face of the project. I don't think people really know who I am usually, but
yeah, but I will say that the experience was really nice of writing, like picking up Go. It's like the lower levelness of. I didn't write C ever. Like I did a C book, maybe took a course. I did a Harvard EDX course, which starts in C or starts in Scratch, then goes in C. But so I like Go because it forces me out of the place where I was with Ruby and JavaScript. And like I get to think about things differently and like try to think about, performance and things like that. So I would say if you're interested, and I'm not selling it very well, but like I would definitely check it out. But I didn't want to check it out to make a contribution. But I did want to have a conversation around like doing open source under the umbrella of GitHub, which you said that you feel like more of an outside contributor. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, it was really important to us when we designed this new thing. We wanted it to be fully open source, and we wanted it to be, because we're really aware. We're trying to be really aware of vendor lock-in. Like we're not trying to do that to you. And so, our tool is completely GitHub specific, but it was really important to us that it be fully open source. And more than that, in order to encourage contribution, we wanted to only use public APIs. So we intentionally set up our team to only have the kind of tools that an external contributor would have. So, obviously I can go open up, the GitHub code and figure out how an API works if I need to. But in terms of what we ship in our in the final product of GH release, it's all the same stuff that any random person out there has access to. So what that ended up doing to our team is I think increasingly we took on that role of external contributor and ended up being advocates for that perspective. And I think that's been really healthy because a lot of times, and this is not a GitHub problem, but a lot of companies, they making an API for something can feel perfunctory. Like, well, we got to have an API because you got to have an API, and you set it up and then you ship it and then you forget about it. We're actually working with that API, teaching contributors how to work with that API and seeing what issues there might be with it. And so we've ended up funneling a lot of feedback back into the company from that kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, I used to always say this from stage all the time when I was doing DevRel, but like the biggest consumer of the GitHub API is GitHub engineers. But the GitHub engineers also have like the ripcord and be like, oh yeah, the thing that happens all the time, including in open source, is like you hit a rate limit and you're like, oh, it'd be great if we didn't have this blocker. So like even with the CLI, I assume you hit the rate limit as well.
Oh, and I have, believe me. Yeah, I've done some stupid stuff with bash loops.
Yeah, so you just take an hour break, go get a lunch or something.
Exactly. Yeah, go make coffee and just wait. Yeah, no, I don't get any special privilege to the point where like I have a testing account that I use a lot, and I try to make another one to have like different properties. I'm not even allowed to have that. So yeah, no, I feel very external to the company.
Yeah, that's amazing too as well. Are there any other projects at GitHub that I know there's some other open source projects, but I don't even know if they're still maintained or who. Like OctoKit wasn't technically owned by GitHub until recently.
Yeah, I don't actually know what the state of OctoKit is. The other big, like our sister project is GitHub Desktop. And that's still thriving. And they have a very different mandate. Like they are trying to replace Git, but by doing this GUI approach that really transforms what it's like to work with Git. So we have a very different kind of mission from GitHub Desktop, but we operate really similarly, in terms of how we write code and interact with the company. Other than us two, I'm trying to think. And those are the two big ones.
Yeah, there's the Ghost one, the GH Oast.
The extension?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cute.
Yeah. That one, I know that one exists, and I know the person who created that actually works at Planetscale now. But I don't know how much that's maintained. The gitignore repo is like one of the biggest projects, but it's all a bunch of it's not markdown, it's a bunch of gitignore files.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, I actually was maintaining that until I left. Okay. Mainly because this more of like this thing is going to go derelict and people keep opening up PRs. Let's do something with it. And I still get pinged. They're like, "Hey, can you merge my thing?" And I was like, "No, sorry, I don't work there anymore."
Yeah.
So there's a trend happening right now where more and more startups are starting with open source first. If you check out any of the batches of YC, you'll see more and more open source companies now submitting applications to YC and getting in. Now, this is a good trend because the scale and velocity of what you can do and grow through open source is off the charts. Now, at OpenSauce, we are invigorated by providing actionable insights. Insights.opensauce.pizza. It's a platform to get intelligence on your open source projects. So if you're a company and you're up and coming through either YC or you're a Series A company who's looking to get their next round of funding and grow community, we have the platform for you. If you're interested in growing your project and growing your open source community, definitely check it out and let us know what you think. But so with the CLI's mandate, you're the voice of the external contributor. I'm curious how that sort of spins into product roadmap conversations. Like, you got funding to ship this thing. Do you still feel like you have funding to continue the thing?
It's different. I think so. We're kind of being put into a position more where we're building out this extensions feature so that people can add their own commands to the CLI, because we realize like our team is small. We're 3 engineers. And once we did our big initial launch and got it out there and got adoption and traction, like we weren't getting pushed to do huge flashy releases anymore, if that makes sense. So we're not in maintenance mode, but we're putting our effort into creating the ecosystem for people to ship their own custom commands and like helping them do that. So I just wrote a big guide to do that. I did a blog post on the GitHub blog about how to write extensions. And we're trying to make that a really stellar experience, because too many people, both internally and externally, are coming to us with ideas. Yeah. And we just we can't do it. So we don't have enough time.
And I think that for a lot of open source projects, if you look at the JavaScript ecosystem, the extension play, so Babel, which is still around, like the extension, the plugin is what they call them, but that ecosystem is like where Babel derives. And Webpack had that as well. And I'm dating myself because that's when I was sort of doing a lot more JavaScript, but I think that's the way to go moving forward. And to have other folks, if you're working on your own tool, and be like, hey, I'm going to open an issue to get these 3 engineers to go do a thing that could help my company out or solve my problems. It makes more sense to teach the man how to fish rather than hand them fish. Is the I don't know if that's going back to the Quaker. It's I think it's working for us. Especially internally, because there's teams at GitHub that want to see their feature represented in the CLI, and they're the subject matter experts, not us. So, when I did all the actions implementation for that was you?
GH, and the actions team is busy. I mean, they have a lot of work to do, and they had 0 time to contribute to this, and so it was an awkward situation of I'm just kind of on the fringe, trying to learn as much as I can about actions to do it justice in the CLI, and we're trying to not keep doing that. We're trying to actually have people write GH extensions, and then we've taken some of those and merged them into Trunk. So it's a nice feeder to get new features in internally, and it's a good pressure release valve for external people, because they want stuff in and we don't get it in fast enough, and it's just ship an extension. You're in charge of releases now, and people like that a lot. Yeah, and they can own their own life cycle, and like you said, the releases. Have you crossed paths with the Probot folks? Would be Gregor is one of them. I'm trying to think of anybody else who's still around. I don't think so.
Yeah. Tommy Bird. He's the one. He still kind of sticks around there, but he's working on GitHub pages now. What about anyway, I could probably name drop a bunch of people, but it sounds like you don't cross paths with anybody internal.
I live an isolated life. I admit that. We hunker down in our Slack channel. We're really
Wait, do you have a separate Slack channel? Or
No. We're in the regular corporate Slack, but we're not trying to avoid people or anything, but it's just the way that it shakes out. We're kind of in our own world most of the time.
Yeah, that's wild. You're on an island, and I think there are other teams in larger organizations that are very similar to yours. Because I know I mentioned the Probot folks because that was very similar pre-Microsoft, how that team operated, where they were building a cool thing to build GitHub apps, and it was all open source. They had their own office hours, they had their own Slack. And I actually was introduced to this group, and I was like, oh, wow, I can, because I was building a lot of bots and integrations and stuff like that to kind of show how to use GitHub and the API and webhooks. And it was just like fascinating. What was challenging is because Brandon Keepers, who was there for so long, when the acquisition happened, he decided, maybe I'm going to go do something. Well, he bought a boat and sailed the world. Nice. But then Probot kind of like sort of hit like a plateau. And I think the sort of what I'm saying is successor of Probot is GitHub Actions now.
Oh,
where Probot was a tool if you wanted to integrate and do your own extension on top of GitHub without creating a second bot account. And then GitHub Actions was like, oh, this is so much easier. And that became the ecosystem. So like where there still makes sense, like open source, when you log in, we actually use a GitHub app. And we also have like installations and GitHub apps onto repos because it's like, it is a bit of our secret sauce. Like our entire infrastructure was built on one GitHub app that was installed on repos we created for the user. And then we would create issues. Like our entire database was GitHub issues that we would run actions on to keep updated and populate user data. And the thing, I did it that way because one, Actions was free, but two, I had a very high aptitude to use the API and just wanted to sort of bend it to my will. We definitely grew out of it. We're actually moving off of that infrastructure like last week. Okay. But it was one of those things there. Basically what I'm getting at is it was like a thing I learned from like this sort of like side room team. And I was like, hey, I have so many questions for you. That's changed a lot because now GitHub's grown up and there's like a whole ecosystem. So I did want to actually talk about stuff that you have worked on in the past, like with the GitHub CLI. I know there is the GH Garden. Yeah. You want to explain that?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know. I'm like an imposter. I don't really belong in this industry. I just think computers are neat. I don't know. To me, they're just like you can make them do funny stuff and artistic stuff and weird stuff. So I'm like constantly looking for some time to steal and do something weird. So we have monthly hack days, and I always try to do something creative each month with business interests that very, very far in the back of my mind. So one of the first ones I did was it's called Repo Garden, and it's you run this. It's in GH. You can run it right now. It's an Easter egg. It's not listed anywhere, I don't think. But if you run GH Repo Garden, it will look at your whatever repository you're in locally, and then it will generate this kind of top-down view of a garden in ASCII. And so every single commit is represented by a flower, and the flower is colored according to like a hash of the commit message or something like that. So you have a little character, and you just walk around the garden, and you stop over a flower, and it'll tell you, oh, this is some commit by this person made on this day. And the idea is to just have like a little fingerprint for a repository, something that's different for every single repository. And the more long-lived a repository is, and the more commits it has, the more it kind of fills up with flowers and gets denser and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, it's a different take on the contributor graph.
Yeah,
definitely. It's a different lens. Any other Easter eggs you have in the CLI?
Yeah, let's see. Well, so there's credits is really cute. I think that was actually the first weird thing I did.
I used to run the credits after every stream on Twitch.
Oh,
so we did a live stream and I'd run the credits. I actually forgot about that because I stopped streaming for like a summer, and then I got back into it. I stopped doing the credits thing. I got to bring that back.
Yep. So credits is similar to Garden. I was trying to think of like how can we like take people's contributions and just make them into something fun and colorful. So yeah, if you run GH credits, you get a scrolling list of credits of all the people who've contributed to GH, but you can point it at any repo. And so you get this like credit scroll with some ASCII art. That might be documented. I'm not sure if that's an Easter egg anymore. Since we've released extensions, I've just been putting all my goofy stuff in there. So
is there like is there a document or is there a doc for all the extensions that people are building, or is it free form?
A doc.
Like a directory.
Oh, so Well, actually, we just shipped a new command called gh extension browse, which opens up this terminal user interface interactive view of all the extensions people have published on GitHub. So we find them based on a repo topic and a naming pattern, and then we introspect the repo to see is this an extension? Could we call this? And so we just dynamically build up this big directory of all the extensions people have made. So you can run that, and then there has a little filter at the top. Just put in my handle, and you'll see all my root extensions. The one I'm proudest of is a GH screensaver, which is just a collection of ASCII animations. So it's fireworks display, pipe, the pipes, the classic pipes thing, but in 2D ASCII. Somebody contributed a Game of Life little thing. It was cute. My pitch was you're waiting for actions to run. You just want to look at something pretty. So you run GH screensaver, get a random screensaver. My most recent thing is probably one of the most cursed things I've ever done. It's called GH Chat. And it is a real-time chat application in GH in your terminal, backed by the most rugged and stable of databases, Gists. It's...
I guess so my original tactic for open source was using Gist, and that's how we were storing data. So I'm right there with you. It
rules. So you can you run GH Chat, and it'll give you an invite link, and then you can send that to anybody, and they run GH Chat with the code.
Is it the comments of the Gist, or is it going in the actual?
It's just comments. Yeah.
Okay.
And the best part is that it's you get an SMTP gateway for free, because GitHub just by default will email you for every Gist comment. So I would ask people to try out my stupid GH Chat command, and then their inbox would just get flooded for every single chat message.
Oh, forever. I guess you had to go to the Gist and unsubscribe or something.
Yes, exactly. Maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud. It's kind of an abuse vector. Please don't spam people. But that was a lot of fun. So all my weird experiments just end up as extensions now.
Okay, very cool. Well, now I know how to browse, and now I know how to filter that. I'm definitely going to check it out. I was going to ask you something else, but I went blank on that. But so there's a future for GitHub CLI, correct?
A future?
You guys do a roadmap or anything like that?
Oh, that's a good question. So we do a roadmap, and it's we try to balance internal requests with external requests, and the way that we do that, I told somebody this last night, and they looked at me like I was crazy, but it's very effective. I just have a script that it just looks at every single issue and every issue comment in the CLI repo, and then just sorts them based on emoji reacts, and that's our roadmap. So if you really want to see features in the CLI, just get emoji reacting. It can be a thumbs down, doesn't matter, because my script doesn't look. Wait,
is that script open source? Because I would totally do that.
It's in my aliases config, which I have in a Gist. It's online. Yeah.
I'll send you a GH chat link, and then you can send me the Gist ID.
Yeah, I'll send it to you over that. It's crude. I mean, it's a simple API invocation, but so that's actually how we inform our roadmap. But the big thing that we're working on right now is encrypting your GitHub token at rest. I feel bad even saying it out loud, because then you realize we don't do that. But soon
we don't do it until soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very soon. We will be interfacing with key managers in different operating systems, so that you don't have to just have an authentication token on your hard drive.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Yeah. So I do the GH auth login, and I love that, but I guess it's not encrypted for now. But I actually wrote a whole blog post on this, because I wiped my machine when I left GitHub, and for every time I set up a new machine, I'm just GH auth login. It gets me my SSH key and does all the work that normally would be a whole day, not even a day, but a couple hours to do every time you start on a new job. And I'm like, this is so nice. I do give up a little bit, not being able to control everything, but it puts it in the right place, and I can make sure I'm always auth in GitHub. And if I'm not, GH auth login. Yeah. It's my favorite feature.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm a huge fan of that too. And setting up Git for you is sounds like such a small thing, but it's super, super nice. I think a thing that we want to do soon is actually have it configure your name and email address as well for you in Git, because that's the next thing you go to commit to this new repo on a new machine, and then Git yells at you for not having a name. I think we want to help with that too. I'm glad to hear it's been helpful.
Yeah. Have been a big fan of CLI for a while, or the GH CLI, and I look forward to continuing to use it. I have not built an extension yet. It was on my roadmap of things to do before I left, and I never got around to it. But I think we actually have some ideas for things to do extensions with, because we do a lot of stuff with GitHub and the GitHub API and open source, and that I even like the stuff like the filtering, the credits. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna look at that code and like we'll just get started there.
Yeah. No, I would love to see that. I don't think I've merged it yet, but I'm publishing my guide for writing a Go extension. Teaches you how to use. We have a helper library that it gives you a lot of the code that we use in GH. You get to use it in your Go extension if you're writing in Go. So my guide tells you.
Oh, just a general Go CLI extension?
Yeah, so it's a library called GoGH, and we actually extracted a lot of our code out and put it in that. So it's things like formatting output, like tabular output, sniffing your terminal to see if it's interactive or not, figuring out if there's color support. So as an extension author, if you say you want to call an API and then like pretty print a table of data, you can just call our library function to do that. You don't actually have to reinvent that. And there's a bunch of other stuff. You can it'll sniff your auth for you. So as an extension author, you don't have to get people to log in. Like it'll just piggyback on GH's authentication. It's a bunch of stuff. Yeah. So it really gets you going really quickly if you're working in Go. We don't have any libraries for other languages yet.
Yeah. So your experience in Go so far, like, do you think you'd ever go back to, the Perls and of the world?
No, I love Go. Go is great. Yeah. I was like, I had not written it before we chose it. We chose it because, honestly, for delivery. Like, we wanted to ship a binary. We did not want to have to think about people's local interpreter versions for Ruby or Python or whatever. And the quick compile time, the general just kind of accessibility and low learning curve, and just how easy it is to cross compile and distribute was huge for us. So that's why we picked it, and then I've come to really appreciate the language too. So all my side stuff is in Go now.
Yeah, it's the language for the cloud.
I guess, I don't know, it's the language for everything. I've replaced a bunch of bash scripts with it. Like I love how it can scale down to like really small tasks really well. Like Java has its merits, but I'm not going to replace a bash script with Java code. I'm just not going to do that, but
include the JVM. Like, I guess you could bundle it together, but Go, that's the other thing why I loved about Go, because like all that sort of binary stuff, like I had not really ever been exposed to. And it's like shoved in your face by default. You're like, oh, I guess this is how we do things here. And I learned a lot about cloud development and Kubernetes and Docker through Go. But I was building like this simple Go REST APIs. That was my intro to Go. It's just like, hey, I'm going to slurp a bunch of data from ESPN, I built an app that basically, it was called Hustlin', and I slurped data from ESPN's API, or it was someone built an API on top of ESPN. And I just wanted to know when there was a baseball game. Because if you don't know, GitHub's office is right near the now Oracle Park. Then it was AT&T Park, but I just didn't want to go to the office when there was a baseball game. And I just wanted to like get a text message or run a CLI command and just tell me if there's baseball.
Don't go to the office.
Yeah, so I had Hustlin', I had istherebaseball.com, and just wanted to know before like wake up, like maybe had coffee, eat an oatmeal. It's like, did I get on the train or did I just work from home?
Yeah.
And
nice.
It was all ready to go.
Cool. Yeah, no, I love it. I like to do CLI stuff in Go. I run like a little artists community online. It's called Tilde Town. And it's a social Linux server. So you get an account, you get a little tilde URL like in the 90s. And we just hang out on the shell, we chat and share weird stuff with each other. I always call it, people think it's a social network, but I call it an artist squat. I really feel like we're squatting in the cloud. It's like, this isn't what you're supposed to use DigitalOcean for. 1,000 people come in to hang out on a Linux server. But I've been using Go a lot there, and it's been so nice because this server has been around since 2014, and I used to do everything in Python. And having to maintain my like body of scripts, which I use for like creating user accounts and reviewing signups and managing all sorts of stuff, got really painful. Like for something that long running, to have to constantly be tracking these Python updates got really grim. And so I do everything in Go now, and that's been super positive. So that's another, kind of non-cloud use case that I highly recommend Go for. It's like little command line programs. Yeah.
So if someone wants to build an extension or join, is there a community around the CLI?
I don't know. I guess organically from our contributors, but
you just hang out in the issues.
Yeah, we don't maintain. We might have a chat on like Libra chat. I don't go though. I don't know. Yeah, I'm unaware of any community outside of our issues. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and how's that working for you? Like, do you get a lot of requests? Do you just point them to extensions and say thanks for the feature, but take to the extension? Like, it sounds like there's a good pathway for people to land onto.
Yeah, we do that a lot now. But every single issue that comes in, we read it. I mean, it's a lot of our time is open source maintenance. We trade off first responder role. And that person's job for 2 weeks is to just read every single issue that comes in. Has this been asked for before? Is this part of a trend? Is this a thing that we want? Is it a thing that we don't want? Should we write it? Should they write it? Should it be an extension? We do that for every issue that comes in. So we will often say, this is a great idea for an extension, go forth, and we'll just label it and let it sit around. Or we'll say, help wanted, here's what to do. So it's a mix. Yeah, depends on the feature people are asking for.
Okay, cool. Well, I will definitely be jumping in soon.
Awesome.
And I appreciate you coming out and having this conversation. And folks, stay saucy.